Why hello you Danish spanner lover. My name is John and in this video you're going to learn everything you need to build a kick-ass membership area within Umbraco v9. So in this video you're going to learn everything you need to create this member area. So we'll be covering things like creating members and roles within CMS, how to restrict certain pages so only certain roles can view them, and on the flip side we'll also be going into all the code so you can create a login page with a login component and we can actually validate that someone is a nice user, or if they're not, we're going to redirect them and show them the nasty error message. Now if this sounds good to you, this is the video for you. Stick around. If you haven't come across any of my videos before, what you're thinking about, my name is John and I do weekly YouTube videos on like dev productivity, coding tips and CMS advice. So if you like that sort of stuff, you know the drill, it's the YouTube. Smash the subscribe button right now, otherwise you might lose my content forever and you'll probably cry every night into your pillow. So assuming we've done that, let's take a look in the back end and start looking at how to create these members and these roles. Before we kick things off, I always like to point out in these videos that all the code you're about to see is available for you to download free of charge from my sample site. I know from first-hand experience that if you're trying to tippy-tappy away, copy code from YouTube, do the rewind, copy stuff, it is a ball ache. So if you want to copy it, all you need to do is head over to my GitHubs. So in my GitHub, it's John D. Jones, no H. While you're over here, you may as well follow me and also like the repo. But yeah, on the home page, in the top left-hand corner, you can see that we've got this Umbraco v9 starter kit. Clone it, all the details of how to set up the database, all that sort of stuff are in it. Now, in order to create this membership area within Umbraco, you'll need to log into the back end. In order to do that, you need to head over to this members tab right here. Now within our members tab we can do two capabilities. So we have the first option of creating a members area and we have this second option of creating roles or groups. I'm going to use the word roles because that's the way I roll. Okay, so in order to create a member you can either click on these ellipses or you can click on the big create member button. From here we can create a new member. Now there's actually something there that I whizzed past. You can see that I can create a new member and I'm creating it of type member. Now we'll come back to this in a minute, however, keep that one in your head. So creating a member is really easy. We're just going to give him a name, John, classic name. So we're just going to say John is a legend. Going to give him a login name, which is John. Password is going to be john@test.com. Then we're going to have a password. The password needs to be more than 7 characters. So password, 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 password. Now underneath these two boxes, you can see that we have this option called the member group. Hope you can see that, which is right there. Now this is how we can apply different roles onto this account. So we'll do that in a little bit. Now you can't see this because my big head is in the way, but I'm going to click the save button. So now we've got our member created, we can create ourselves a role. Now within roles, click on the ellipses again, click on create, and we're going to call these like VIP users, because only the VIPs can get into our special page. So give it a name and click save, go back into our members, select on my boy John, scroll down the bottom, click on this big add thing, and we can assign John to our VIP users group. Click save again, job's a good one. Now on this member you can see that we have various bits of profiling information. So we have things like comments, is approved, email login, that kind of gubbins. Now the good thing about Umbraco is it is fully customizable. So if you're creating your own member area, it is highly likely that you're going to have to create a profile for your member with some different information which doesn't come out the box. So this in Umbraco is super simple. Head over to the settings tab. In here you can see that we have the member types. On member types you can see we have this member object. So remember when I created that user it was of type member. It's basically using this thing here as its template. And from here you can see that we've got stuff like comments, failed password attempts. So if you want to add in your own custom member profile information, go over here, create some properties and go crazy. Now the next thing we need to do is start restricting our pages so only our VIPs can access it. So to do that, let's go over to the content tab and let's look at some pages. So in my structure, you can see that I've got the login page. This is going to create, this is going to be the area where we're going to put that login component. I've also got this secure page. This is just a page of simple content. Now, what we want to do is restrict this page so only the VIP users can access it. So we'll be doing that by, again, clicking on the ellipses, right clicking. Down here, you can see that we have restrict public access. So clicking on this, we're going to select the group-based protection. Not to be confused with a condom, which offers sexual protection. Now, in our restrict public access, we have a few options. First, we want to restrict who can actually access our pages. So this is going to be our VIP group. Now, the next thing you'll need to do, otherwise you will not be able to save the page, as you can see it's grayed out down here, is put in the login page. So when an Umbraco doesn't allow someone to access the page, they're going to be redirected to our login page. You also need to put in the error page, and my error page is also going to be the login page. Adding in all these properties, you can see that I can now save it. Clicking on save, clicking on OK, publishing the page. This is pretty much everything we need to do in order to access this page. So as you can see, we've got this little red cross now, showing that it's a secured page. And if we try and access this in the Umbraco backend, you can see that I've been redirected to the login page. So this is exactly what we wanted to happen. Now let's have a look at how we can actually create our login page and that login component. The next step in our journey is to create a login page and render that beautiful login component. This is what you can see on the screen in front of you, and I think you'll agree it's looking very nice. Now, in order to create this page, you'll simply need to head over to the Umbraco CMSs. So as you can see in my page tree, I've got this login page. It doesn't actually have any special content in it, it's empty. And to create this page within the CMS, all we need to do is go to the settings, we go to document types. Now the way that I've structured this starter kit is I've created a base type. This base type is basically just to have in shared metadata between different document types, and under here I've created this login page. The login page does not have anything in particular that's needed for this. It's just a simple placeholder that we're going to add in our components. Now the next thing we need to do is make sure that the model builder has been working successfully. So if we go to settings, model builder, when you do this, click on this generate models. If yours is out of date, you're going to see a little warning, so click on this button. This is going to generate you the Umbraco models. Now as you can see in my Visual Studio, I have got something which is called the login page generated right here. So this is our model, and this is how we're going to get up and running with our membership. The first class that you'll need to create is the page controller. So in this starter kit, I've put all my custom code within a separate class library, and within here there's a folder called controller and login page. So the login controller is in front of you, and you can see it's of type render controller. So this is the base type you need to use whenever you're creating document types within the Umbraco CMS. Now, one of the really interesting things which I haven't covered in the series yet is that we're going to be using this iMember manager, and this is basically how we can get access to loads of useful member related data. Now, creating a controller, we pass in all the basic base types. Most of these are actually required by Umbraco, so just pass these in. And the index itself, fairly simple. I'm using my composed page view model pattern. So in this one, just so you can see it, all I'm doing is basically using generics to pass in a page and a view model. Now you can use a different pattern to pass the view model down into the view if you want to. The only real important property that's worth talking about is I'm passing in is logged in. So is logged in status, you can guess what it does. you're not a silly person. It's basically going to allow us to determine if the current user or site visitor is actually logged in or are they anonymous. So this page and this call is going to open a view. So within our view folder, you can see I've created this login page. In here, it's called index.cshtml. So I'm using the isLoggedIn model to basically call one of two view components. So in order to create this login page, we've got our overall base page controller. So this is going to know when every single time a request is made for a page of type login, it's going to render this. Now, in order to add the login box component onto the page, we're going to need to create three things. Technically, if you really wanted to, and depending on your architecture preferences, you only need to create two things. However, I'll leave this up to you. So the way that I've structured my demo here is that if you're logged in, we're going to be calling a authenticated view component. If you're not, we're going to be calling an anonymous component. So in the anonymous component, it means that you're a normal site visitor and you're going to see the login box. If you're in the authenticated component, you're a known user, and I'm going to simply render some profile information. Now, if you really wanted to, you could just put the login box within this page, and then as you'll see shortly, you could just use redirects to then maybe redirect this person to like a profile page, that kind of stuff. I've split it up this way for this demonstration just to prove some concepts to you. So yeah, just because I've done it this way, I think the point and the takeaway is that you don't necessarily have to do it this way yourself. So as you can see, we've got the base page covered. Now I think the most interesting thing is to look at the anonymous view. So when we're working with the .NET Core, MVC5, whatever you want to, we don't have the concept of partial views anymore. And this is where view components come in. So if you can see this view component here. So .NET 5, we use view components. Just like a controller, we use view component controllers to intercept those requests. So as you can see here, I've got my anonymous component, and all a view component really needs to do is have a name, so anonymous component, and then we're going to call a view. And in this example, I'm just going to pass in an empty view model. So this can be anything you want. Technically, I don't even really need to pass in this view model. But if we walk this back, you can see that I'm invoking the view component by passing in its name. So the name here is anonymous component. The name of this view component is anonymous component. That's how all the routing's auto magically hooked up. And then we're calling a view. Now the view is inside our web project, crazily enough, and you need to create your related view component views in a folder called components, and you just need to name the folder after your view component name, and in there we create a view, and the view needs to be called default.CHTML or CHTML if you're not an idiot. So this is our beautiful login component. So whenever we're creating forms in Umbraco, as I've mentioned in previous videos, you'll be using the begin Umbraco form. So in here, we need to give it the type of surface controller that we want to talk back to. And then we need to give it the action within the surface controller you want to call. And within here, we've got all the kind of classics. So we've got the anti-forgery token to make sure those naughty people can't do anything and intercept our requests. We've also got a definition here for the username and the password. Now, one of the nice things about the view model that I used is this actually comes out of the box with Umbraco. So hopefully you can see this. It's a little bit small. I'll zoom in just so you can see everything. So as you can see here, we've got this Umbraco CMS Web Common Models login. So this is actually not something I've created. If we go to the definition, you can see that we've got this nice view model that we can use, and in it, it's got the username, it's got the password, and it's got the remember me. So when you're creating this membership area in this login form, you don't have to create this view model yourself. I recommend that you use the one that Umbraco gives you. Save yourself some code, job's a good one. So as you can see, what's going to happen is we've got this surface controller, and when someone clicks on this button here, we're going to be calling that controller. So going back to our core file, if you look in the controllers, you can see that I've created this folder and it's called Surface Controller. In Surface Controller, we have a login box controller. So this form is basically going to call this login box controller. So it needs to be of type Surface Controller. This is a login box controller. So if we go back here, default, you can see that we've got the type and it's calling this authenticate method. And in here, we've got the type name, and then we've also got the action, which is called authenticate. Now I've decorated authenticate with HTTP post. So going back to index, you can see that the form type has been set to HTTP post. So important. I've also got the validate anti-forgery token attribute applied. So this thing here is important to prevent those naughty people being dickheads. So just look in here and add this line. So these two things can make your controller super secure. Now, when I started learning about Surface controllers, the thing that I got confused about is I actually thought this was going to be a page level controller. And that's not the case. In Umbraco, a Surface controller is a component that you apply within a page. Now, the way that Surface controllers are used in V9 is kind of different to V8. So as you can see in V9, what we do is we create those two, or we create that one view component. That view component is going to render a component. It's going to render that login box. Then within our login box HTML, we're going to do this form postback. So if you think about it, the Surface controller is basically just there to deal with the postback of this form and nothing else. So we've got our page. On our page, we've got the view component, which is going to render our login control. And then the thing which actually deals with that click button is going to be the Surface controller. So I hope that makes sense. It confused the heck out of me when I started learning Umbraco many moons ago. So in the login box controller, we're going to have all the interesting stuff. So we've already come across the iMember manager. We've also got the iMember SignIn manager. So using these two bad boys, we're going to have the power to check that the user details that have been submitted during the form, if they're valid or not. And if they are valid, we can then log somebody in. So this is going to be super cool. So we've got a load of parameters and dependencies that we're passing in here. Most of these are out of the box Umbraco things that you have to use. I am passing in this iSettings service, and I covered this in a previous video. This is basically just a way for me to access global settings. While we're here, just so you know, whenever you're injecting your own custom dependencies into your controllers, you're going to have to make sure that it's registered with the dependency injection framework. You can do this by creating a composer and then just doing an add transient with your interface to concrete types. So back to our class, you can see that we've got our beautiful authenticate method. So just like any ASP.NET project, first thing you want to do is make sure that the model state is valid. So if someone, if you've got like required field on a property, if that's not being put in, we're basically going to get an error. In this example, I'm going to return entry denied PAL, because we don't want those scamps going through our secure pages. Then we're going to do a redirect to the current Umbraco page. So because this is a component on a page, we can't do a return view. So you have to use current Umbraco page, and this is going to figure out where the URL for the page that the component is being located in. Now, in order to log somebody in and validate they're okay, we can use the member manager, and we can use the validate credentials async. So this is an await method because it is async, and just to make sure and you're aware that the action is also being decorated with async. So in here we're passing in that login model that we talked about previously. So we've got a username and a password. We have optional parameters as well, I believe, from here. Yeah, oh no, we don't. So you just need to pass in username and the password. This is basically going to tell you if those details are valid or not. If they are valid, you can then use the SignIn manager, and you can do the password sign in async, passing in the username, the password, and this is the one where we have some additional parameters. So we can set is persistent. So yeah, I like to make my login persistent because I can't be bothered to log in and out. And also we can do the locked out on failure. So because I'm lazy and this is a sample site, I'm going to put false. However, for good security, you would want to put this as the true. Now, if our sign-in attempt has been successful, you can get this dot succeeded. There's also the options of doing things like is locked out. There's plenty of things within here, so we can do things like is not allowed, requires two-factor, blah blah blah. So for this simple example, we're just going to deal with succeed, but be aware that you have all this extra information so you can really create this detailed in-level password experience. So in this example, what I'm going to do is if sign-in is being successful, I'm going to redirect them to the member page. And I've set the member page within the CMS, so it's content editable. So if I have a look back within the CMS, you can see that I have this settings page down here. In settings page, I've got this member page URL, and in here, I'm going to point it to my secure page that I created a minute ago. Nice. Going back to the codes. Basically, if none of this has worked, I'm just going to pass the page back. And again, if there's been any errors, that kind of stuff, we can then display them on the page. If everything has gone according to plan, when we go back to our login screen, I can type in my username and password combo, click in login, and as you can see, I've been redirected to our secure page. Now, if I go back to my login page, now that I'm logged in, as you can see, instead of actually seeing that login component, I've now got access to my signed in view. And from here, I've got the option to log out. Clicking on the log out button is going to take us to this logout method. And if I click continue, it's going to log me out. So the last thing we just need to look at is how all of that works. So back within our website, we can see that we've got the authenticated component. So from here, I've got the options of rendering out some profile information, and we'll look at that when we get to the controller. And then right down the bottom, hopefully you can see all of that, we've got this option of URL surface action. So surface action is going to allow you to directly call one of those actions within the surface controller. So we're going to call the logout action index, and it's going to be within the login box surface controller. So remember, login box, logouts, this maps to login box controller, and we've got the action right here, which is logout. This is of type HTTP GET. It's always useful to add those in. Now from here, we can then use the member manager and the member sign-in manager again. And from here, you're going to get access to this sign out async. And then as soon as we've done the sign outs, we can then redirect the user to the current Umbraco page. And as you saw, we were logged out. Now, all of this magic of getting profile information is all done within our view component controller. So as you can see, I'm using the member manager, and then using the member manager, I can get information about the current user using the get current member async method. From here, I'm going to get basically access to the member identity user object. And then from this object, I can get useful bits and bobs like the name, the email, comments, the roles that they're in, and basically anything that you define within that member type that we looked at in the back office will be available via this API and this object. Congratulations, you have now graduated to Membership Manager Badass in Umbraco v9. Now, as you can see, all the components, there were quite a few. However, fundamentally, the principles are fairly simple. we basically need to use that member manager and the member sign-in manager to do all that member logged in, logged out, credential checking sort of stuff. You need to create the surface controller so your form can post data back to Umbraco, and then you just basically need to create a document type in order to create a page to render everything on. Now in the back end you have all that capability of adding members, adding them to roles, and then securing pages down, and tie that all together, you're going to have a really easy, really flexible management system that you've built. So I'm hoping you found this video valuable, and if you have, please leave some comments below. This is a series on Umbraco, and I like to do these videos based on your feedback. So if there's a topic that you'd like to see me cover in more detail, please let me know. Now, if you haven't already, because you're a numbnuts or you're just very forgetful, remember to gently tap on the subscribe button because you don't want to lose videos with my face on it. Also, if you want to do me a solid because you have found value in this video, please hit the like button. Basically, a like allows me to know that you want me to do more content on Umbraco. It also tells the YouTube algorithm to show my video to more people, so I'd appreciate that. Now, if you would like to learn more about building Umbraco v9 and you want it in a condensed form, I have now started writing my Umbraco v9 book. There's a link below. At the moment you can get it in the pre-release phase, so it's much cheaper. I think it'll be finished around June 2020, but every week you'll be getting updates on the latest content. So if that's of interest to you, head over to LeanPub, link below. The final thing that I always say is I do a weekly newsletter, which basically gives you updates on my content, industry news, basically things that I found interesting on Reddit that week. You can unsubscribe, you won't get spammed. The link for that is below. Otherwise, I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are. Hope you got some good value from this video and you can build something super cool within Umbracos, and happy coding.